Hi everybody, it's Pastor Joel. I want to share with you today about David again from the First Samuel, and today we're going to look at another quality of David that has to do with him, as God said, being a man after His own heart. So today we're going to look at the reality or the fact that David waits for God. And as I said in the last video, David, it's not just a one-way street. David waits for God, but God helps David. So let's look at 1 Samuel 26, look at a couple of pieces of this. So a little context here. David, again, is on the run from Saul, and he keeps on having opportunities to defeat Saul. God keeps basically just putting Saul right before David in some cases, quite precarious positions. The last time this happened, David was hiding in a cave and Saul went in to relieve himself. And David got right up to him, close enough to cut off the edge of his robe. But he didn't harm Saul. He ended up using that to show Saul he could have harmed him, but he didn't. And Saul said, "You're right, I'm wrong, and I'm leaving." So he left him alone for a while. But as always, the spirit of Saul would get stirred up again against David, and then he would go off to destroy him. But here, what we're going to see here in 1 Samuel 26 is another opportunity that David had to destroy Saul, and we're going to see what he did. So in verse 6, 1 Samuel 26:6, it says, "Then David said to Ahimelech the Hittite and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, saying, 'Who will go down with me to Saul in the camp?'" So he's overlooking the camp of Saul, and it's nighttime. And he wants one volunteer to go with him. He's going to sneak down into the camp. I mean, that's bold, right? And Abishai said, "I will go down with you." And Abishai, it says, is Joab's brother. The sons of Zeruiah, they're called. And David refers to them in another place as men of blood. He says, "What do I have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? All you guys are good for is bloodshed." But these guys were the captains in his army, and that is what they were for. And you'll see this come through. So David, in verse 7, and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping inside the circle of the camp with his spear stuck in the ground at his head. And Abner and the people were lying around him. Then Abishai said to David, "Today God has delivered your enemy into your hand. Now therefore, please let me strike him with the spear to the ground with one stroke, and I will not strike him a second time." He's saying, I won't even have to. I'm going to finish this guy off in one stroke. But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him." And you're here going, what? And you have to think that this guy, Abishai, this man of blood, is thinking, are you kidding me? He's right here. He's asleep. We can kill him with his own spear. This is like the dream situation. But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him." And here's why. "For who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be without guilt?" And the answer is nobody. And David also said, "As the Lord lives, surely the Lord will strike him." Do you hear that? He said, "As the Lord lives, surely the Lord will strike him. Or his day will come that he dies." He'll die of natural causes. "Or he'll go down into battle and perish." David was saying there's a lot of different ways he can die, but he's not going to die by my hand or by yours. So David's faith was placed in God's ultimate justice and his sovereignty, and he would wait for God's justice. Now, this is a tremendous quality, and this is not something that's worked into us easily, but God will work it in. But he teaches us to wait for him. And you have to know when an opportunity is from God and when it's not. The sons of Zeruiah, Abishai, saw this as a moment given by God, but David knew it wasn't. And how did he know? He knew God was not giving him an opportunity to destroy his enemy because he would have had to sin against the Lord to take the opportunity. And that's the difference. So if you and I think about, like, you get an opportunity in business to make a lot of money, but the condition is you're going to have to do something dishonest in order to make the money. Well, a person who's not accustomed to waiting on God or trusting in him for their ultimate blessing is going to say, well, here's this opportunity. Who passes this up? Sure, I'll do this little thing, no big deal. Won't get in trouble, of course, right? That's the only way you can convince yourself. And then I'll go on and make this money and everything will be great. But if you have to sin to seize the opportunity, is it really from God? And David understood, no, this is not an opportunity from God, because if I sin to seize it, then I put myself in a position that I'm no longer in God's favor, and I will not do that. So I'll wait for the Lord. In verse 11, he said, "The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But now please take the spear that is at his head and the jug of water and let us go." So David took the spear and the jug of water from beside Saul's head, and they went away, but nobody saw it or knew it, nor did any awake, for they were all asleep. Listen to this, because a sound sleep from the Lord had fallen on them. So David waits for God. God helps David. There's a relationship in these things. If you want to know what it is to be helped by God, you're going to have to pass up dishonest opportunity to wait for a righteous opportunity. But the blessing of the Lord, the scripture says, makes rich, and he adds no sorrow to it. The blessing that you try to give to yourself because you wouldn't wait on God brings a curse with it. And David would not have anything to do with the curse because he was waiting for God's blessing. So David goes back up on top of the hill. He's got his water jug. He's got his spear. And he calls out to the commander of Saul's army, to Abner. He says, "Hey, Abner." He says, "Hold, Abner, aren't you supposed to be watching over your master?" He said, "Because look what I got right here. Isn't this your master's spear? And isn't this his jug of water? I thought you were supposed to be protecting him." And of course, this is very embarrassing for Abner. He'd slept right through this little mini invasion of the camp and the whole thing. And Saul gets up and he sees and he realizes, as David speaks with him, that Saul was given into David's hands again, and David spared his life. So in verse 21, Saul said, "I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will not harm you again, because my life was precious in your sight this day. Behold, I've played the fool and have committed a serious error." Now, David has heard this kind of talk before from Saul, but Saul always changes his mind later on and comes back after him. So David responds this time. David replied, "Behold, the spear of the king. Now let one of the young men come over and take it." He's like, "I don't want your spear. I don't want any proof. I don't need any of these monuments of what could have been a battle or my triumph. I don't need any of that. So have one of your young men come and take it. The Lord will repay each man for his righteousness and his faithfulness, for the Lord delivered you into my hand today, but I refused to stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. Now behold, as your life was highly valued in my sight this day, so may my life be highly valued in the sight of the Lord, not in Saul's eyes." You see that? He didn't say, "I valued your life, now you value mine." He said, "No, I valued your life, so may God value mine," because that was where his trust was placed. "And may he deliver me from all distress." That means you, Saul. Then Saul said to David, "Blessed are you, my son David. You will both accomplish much and surely prevail." He just basically said, "David, I know one day you're going to win. You're going to come out on top in all this." So David went on his way, and Saul returned to his place. So David waits for God. God helps David, and David is ultimately blessed by his enemies. I mean, think about this. So you and I can really afford to wait, can we not? To wait on the blessing of God. We get so caught up in, I have to seize this moment right here, right now. There's all this haste, and you do something unethical or whatever to try to make your future what you want it to be. When if you and I would take the long view and consider that we must, what we really, or I guess the only thing that we really can afford to do is to do what is right and what is pleasing to God, whether or not it presents as an opportunity, and trust Him that down the road in the future, we have a hope because He is the one who will lead us on to prosper or to do well or to experience exaltation or honor as David did not many years after this. So that's just a word of challenge to us. So wait for God. God will be your helper. And in the end, you will be blessed by your own enemies. So let that encourage your heart today. That's all I have for you.